Hey, it's time for another edition of Whatcha Watchin. People ask me what I watch, because I do movie reviews on Facebook, and I offer my opinion here in the Ask Chuck Dixon segments, and often you'll ask me about TV shows or movies or whatnot there, and but I'm giving you a writer's perspective as I troll the various streaming services. This week, HBO Max. Warner Brothers' big monster streaming service. Um, and I'm going to start with a couple of miniseries. The Pacific. I got a lot of questions about Band of Brothers, which I liked. I liked Band of Brothers. But I prefer this one. I prefer this limited series that involved with the 1st Marine Division as they fight in World War II. And there's a lot more action in this one than there is in Band of Brothers. They don't do as much of the basic training boot camp stuff. It's by basically a lot of the same people. It's a Tom Hanks produced deal. And it's impressive for a lot of reasons. They tell an epic story very well. They also tell it with a level of brutal honesty that's rare in period filmmaking, particularly today. There's no sugarcoating of this material. The war in the Pacific, unlike the war in Europe, was a war without mercy. It was a battle for the islands of Japan, leading up to Japan, between the United States Marine Corps and the Imperial Japanese Army, that there was no quarter given on either side. These combatants really learned to hate one another. And the level of brutality on both sides, let's face it, war is brutal. I'm not casting aspersions at anybody. War is brutal. It's a nasty, horrible, dirty, filthy, soul-killing business. And anyone should hate war. And as I often say, soldiers hate war more than anyone because they've seen it. They know what it's about. But this, this miniseries is remarkable, as I said, in its frank portrayal of battle and its effect on young men. And it's also great because as a historical record, the level of accuracy in it is jaw dropping. Down to every little detail. Uniform, camouflage patterns, equipment, webbing gear, it all evolves over time. The Marines look different at the end of the miniseries than they did at the beginning because they're equipped differently as conditions develop on the battlefield, as new weapon systems and new things are developed in order to help them win this fight. And a lot of this is due to it being taken from some excellent source material. All of the material in the miniseries is drawn from 2 books, With the Old Breed by Eugene Sledge and Helmet for My Pillow by Robert Leckie. Both of these guys appear in the story as characters because both of these books are first-hand accounts. I'm not sure about the Leckie book, but I know the Sledge book was never written for publication. Eugene Sledge wrote With the Old Breed as a record for his family, so his children and grandchildren would understand what he went through. And because of that, it's an extraordinarily candid account of his time in the Pacific. And it's one of the greatest eyewitness accounts of war ever written, as is Helmet for My Pillow. Like he writes on equally compelling, equally candid, equally honest portrayal of men in war. Neither man presents themselves as a hero. They talk about their deepest emotions, what they went through. And in reading these books, much like the miniseries accomplishes, you're really drawn into their lives. You are shoulder to shoulder with them. They're very intimate portrayals of men in combat, and the miniseries captures it perfectly. I've read both of these books a few times. You simply will not find a better first-hand account of what combat is like than either of these books. But I suggest you read them both. Okay, another HBO series, Westworld. Westworld's based on the Michael Crichton movie from the 1970s. Yul Brynner as a robot, and it sort of expands on that. It takes place, years later, as the corporation that created Westworld. It's a tourist attraction populated mostly by robots, where people can live out their Wild West fantasies. And it's a handsomely produced series. It looks great. It's obviously cost a fortune to film. And it comes up with some intriguing ideas. But my only problem with it is it's so freaking bleak. And I'm talking about, I just talked about the Pacific. This is a real life event, which, tens of thousands of people died in one of the most brutal theaters of war in modern history. And yet this show's bleaker. This show takes the point of view that basically people are just crap. They're just terrible. And somehow the robots that we created are superior to us. And yeah, it's all an analogy to race and, yawn. And it's all pretty obvious. But it's all just so dour and downbeat. And, each episode just makes you feel worse about being alive. And also, each episode makes you feel like you just wasted an hour of your time. So I'm going to be quite frank with you. I only got a few episodes into, I think, season 2 on this one, and I had to give it up because it was actually affecting my mood day to day. I didn't care what happened next. Everything is just so awful, and the characters are so terrible to each other, and everybody's so rotten that it simply isn't worth watching anymore. The moral compass of this show is stuck. Stuck on the dark side. It never really moves. There's no humor. There's nothing funny. Characters don't seem to have arcs. The only characters that seem to have arcs are the robots, which is bizarre. And I get what they're doing. Yeah, I see what you're doing, HBO. I see what the idea is. But it's all just very tiresome. Now, another series that's not a lot of laughs, but I enjoyed it a lot more, was Mayor of Easttown. And it stars Kate Winslet as a police detective. She's a township police detective, the only police detective in a township in the southwestern part of Pennsylvania, in the Philadelphia suburbs. And there's a case with a missing girl and then a murdered girl. And do the cases have anything to do with one another? And can she get to the bottom of it? And will her police chief take the case away from her and give it to the county CID? Winslet is terrific in the lead role. And the cast is uniformly amazing. It's one of those stories that's common now. It seems to be popular, where the lead character discovers more and more secrets about the community she thought she knew. And things about the people around her that she knows and love are revealed, and just layers of the onion are peeled away as she gets to the bottom of these pair of mysteries of this murdered girl and this missing girl. And the only thing is that she's not returning to Easttown, which is a made-up fictional town set in Delaware County, Pennsylvania. But she doesn't return to the town. She's not retired or anything else. So it's not that weak trope that they keep overusing, especially in streaming shows. And but she's a lifelong resident, which actually makes it all the more impactful because she's lived around these people all of her lives and didn't really know them. Yeah, and Guy Pearce is in it, a small role. It's not a role with a whole lot of point. They could have had anybody in it, but Guy was probably free, and they flew him in for a few days. So it's always good to see Guy Pearce. I like Guy Pearce. But for me, the most remarkable thing about this series is it's set where I grew up. it Easttown kind of stands in for Marcus Hook and Eddystone, which were towns in the county that I lived in. I lived like the next town over, but it's neat to hear like my hometown, Drexel Hill, referred to, Upper Darby, hospitals and restaurants and streets and things that I know about. And it was all shot in the area. Well, it wasn't all shot in Delaware County. They shot all over the Philadelphia area and in neighboring counties to get the kind of locations they wanted. But a lot of it looked very familiar to me, and I know in a number of instances, it's like, yeah, I know that street. But they would talk about all these place names that I knew, and it was kind of cool, to have a story set in a place I was that familiar with, because I spent most of my childhood and young adulthood living in Delaware County. But the really amazing thing about it is the show captures the feel of Delaware County. It's anyone from the surrounding counties always talks about the people from Delaware County, because we tended to be more brusque, more rude, more pessimistic, a dark sense of humor. It seems to pervade Delaware County. And I put that down to a large number of Irish that live there. So, they tend to have a sort of downbeat look on life. And especially anybody trapped in Delaware County, you have to remain there. So they really do capture the feel. Maybe not the way Delaware County is now, but the way it was, in the 60s and 70s. But you'll find that with people that writing about a place they know, and the creators of the show obviously were from Delaware County. They couldn't have written this without being there, without understanding it in an intuitive way. But when people write about places they know, they generally write about the places from their own past. So even though it's set present day, it's really not. But then again, most TV and movie entertainment is set in a kind of timeless universe anyway. But it certainly looks like today, with attitudes perhaps from the 1970s. But and then on top of all of the things that made it kind of cool for me, is that these actors worked really hard to sound like they were from Delaware County. Kate Winslet does an amazing job. Apparently, this production it's a limited miniseries. I think it's 7 episodes. Production was halted because of the coronavirus, and so they shot 2 episodes and had to come back later, almost a year later, and do the other 5. And Kate Winslet's accent's good in the first 2 episodes. Gets even better because she obviously worked with a dialect coach during the break. But everybody does it. She never slips up. And I read about the series, and they said that when they were off set, she would go back to her normal English accent. The rest of the cast would keep talking in the Delaware County accent they had learned to try to stay in the character. But Winslet was so good at it that she could go back and forth and just turn on that Delco accent. And not only is the accent there, and the phraseology and the way of speaking and the pace of speaking and the inflections and things like that, but the writers also include bits of speech that are, I'm from Delaware County, so I didn't know this, but bits of speech that people have told me are, no one else says that. No one else talks like this. And the two examples I can give you are when you end a sentence with "and all," and that's kind of the Delaware County version of "etc." So, we went to the shopping center and we looked at new cars, and then we got something to eat, and all. Just etc. There was more. The other one is all, which you can end a sentence with "is all," which is a stand-in for "only." Like, I'm where are you going? I'm gonna go get a pizza. Is all. I'm only gonna go get a pizza. And I think that those 2 phrases are holdovers from Irish. Somehow they're some sort of Americanized, anglicized version of something in the Irish language, but they're just kind of holdovers. And like I said, I was totally unaware that everybody in the world didn't use those phrases. But this show's full of that kind of stuff. And it really is remarkable to see a show where they worked as hard as they did on an accent that specific to a very small region. Kind of cool, huh? That took a lot of work. That's heavy lifting, writing wise and acting wise. But I'd love to read a book on the production of this show, just to get a look in on how this process worked, how they got them all into it. But okay, we went from bleak to really bleak to pretty bleak. Let's end on a happy note. HBO Max currently has The Iron Giant. It's a Warner Brothers production, so it'll be there forever. And Iron Giant, if you haven't seen it, and I don't think there's probably one person watching this because most of your comic fans that hasn't seen Iron Giant, but maybe you didn't know it was on HBO Max. And of course, it's the story of a crash landing of an alien vessel, which eventually rebuilds itself into this giant war robot whose brain is damaged. His processing, his programs are scrambled, so that he's kind of a blank slate. And he gets adopted by this little boy, and the little boy basically teaches him what it's like to be a hero. This little boy's a big comic book reader. And so the Iron Giant takes on Superman as a role model. And of course, there's all kinds of complications when his programming begins to kick in, changing him back into the dangerous weapon that he is. But it's an amazing. It's by Brad Bird, who, for my money, is a genius. It's one of the last big budget cell animated features made before Brad Bird took off for Pixar. And it's dare I say, heartwarming. It's got a great story, lots of suspense, terrific voice acting. It's a lot of fun. The animation is freaking incredible. It's inspiring at the end. And everything about it works. Everything about it works. Brad Bird is a super competent storyteller. This guy knows how story works. Everything from his Pixar efforts to his Mission Impossible movie, this guy knows how to set stuff up and how to pay it off. And this movie does it terrific. It's a movie that the kids can enjoy, but there's plenty here for the adults. Just superior entertainment all the way around. And as I said, it's on HBO Max. So round up the little ones, sit them down in front of the TV. Hey, if there's a TV show, movie, whatever you'd like me to talk about, review, or just watch, tell you what I thought, contact me at brunobookstore@gmail.com. That's brunobookstore@gmail.com. And while we're at it, while I got you, before you take off, check out ArcTunes and stuff. ArcTunes is a free digital comic service. You can read it on any device all the way up to your big screen TV in your living room because the resolution is that good. There's dozens of different comics. We're adding more new series every day. And just check it out. I'm sure there's something there that you'll find that you like and you'll want to follow as each new weekly episode drops. And that's it for me. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And I'll see you all down the road.